Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Forms class. Today we are talking about the exclusive sale and listing agreement, the updated Form 1A. Unfortunately, the Northwest MLS is still finalizing the forms manual. Typically, we always utilize the forms manual to obviously train off of, because that gives all the insight and gives you more details and the rules that aren't even printed on the form itself. But as soon as we get those, we will probably do the class again. I mean, this is one of those things that, right, repetitive training is kind of necessary in order to really ingrain it into our minds and memory. And so we will definitely probably be doing that anyway. Last night I did do a training session for Train the Trainers for Designated Brokers, Managing Brokers Only with Annie Fitzsimmons. It was supposed to be a 3.5 hour long class, but it went like over 4 hours. It was, yeah, very detailed, a lot more insight. She gave us some good slides I'm going to be bringing to the sales meeting coming this Tuesday. So we're going to be having a little pop quiz and letting everyone kind of see how we're doing, you know, for this update to begin on the 1st. There was something new that she touched on, and it's going to, I don't want to like get too much into it because I don't want to open a can of worms, but I will at least mention it, that licensed assistants that are providing real estate brokerage services will have to also be added onto the buyer's brokerage services agreement if they are doing services on behalf of the firm.
Including TC?
Including TCs. So this is something that really sent ripples through the meeting. So yeah, definitely.
So everybody on the team, every licensed agent on the team needs to be listed?
Every licensed person who's working on the deal that's representing the buyer, that is doing services.
How about the seller?
So
is the 1A gonna do that too?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So this is just was said to us last night. So I don't want to get too, you know, crazy heavily into it, but we're going to bring more information to you guys come the sales meeting. We're working with our own in-house attorney, Aaron. We're doing more small groups and you know, discussions about this, how we're going to handle this. Annie anticipates a lot of people are going to end up having their own little addendum added to like listings and also to buyer brokerage services agreements. So stay tuned. So there's a lot more like education and things coming that we're gonna have to really be on top of in order to comply with the laws. All right.
I have a question. What
Yes.
if you're having somebody cover for you because you're out of town and that somebody is not on your actual team? It's like another agent, maybe from another office or something.
They are going to have to be added as well. Yep. Isn't change good, you guys?
I mean, it makes sense.
It does.
You want your client to understand
these
other people are gonna be working on stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so hold on to that one and just, you know, put it in the memory banks for now. And we're gonna dive into our Form 1A, the exclusive sale and listing agreement. Also, one other last thing, and I was trying to get the answer this morning before class, since this is the form we are actually doing. I've left a message for Jeannie Simpson, the Northwest MLS legal counsel, to find out, but it sounds as if they are extending the timeline for the listing. So it sounds like it's gonna go from 30 to 90.
I think I read that in the.
Yeah.
Useful.
Yeah. But it's still not into the updated form. So a lot of stuff going on. So we'll keep you posted on that. Obviously that makes sense. That's how long Lennox asked for, like, what, a decade ago, or however long it's been going now. So it's good. I mean, that's definitely gonna be a really good thing. Constantly, we are hearing, like, hey, I've got a seller that they're ready to sign now. I want to sign them now, but they're not gonna be ready for another, like, 2.5 months. So this is gonna be nice if they do. All right. Just making sure. Okay, so this exclusive sale and listing brokerage services agreement. The agreement is made by and between, so here's your sellers and listing firm with regard to the real property commonly known as, so here's your address, city, county, Washington, obviously, and then the zip, and legally described on Exhibit A, the property. When should you guys be getting a preliminary title report?
As soon as possible.
As soon as reasonably practical. We're gonna be using that phrase a lot, right? Anyway, so let's start using it. Order your preliminary titles right away, so then you can see, making sure you're working with the right seller, making sure there's not a lot of liens and issues. We just had someone I talked to yesterday, literally like, hey, I just pulled this, I just looked at this, and there's tax liens all over this. Actually, two people. One person had one simple tax lien from just the from the last month, but that one's not bad, right? But the other one, like, oh no, yeah, there's a bunch of tax liens on this. Should I be worried? Yeah, maybe you should. There should be a red flag automatically, right? When there's in those exceptions. So definitely make sure that you guys are looking at that, you're ordering that, get your Exhibit A's and include it with the paperwork the seller is signing. There's only one first impression. There's only one first impression. There's only one first impression. That's all you get, right? So every single listing, when you take that listing and you turn it live in the MLS, the supplements should be fully packed. All the supplements you need should be in there. The only one I'm like, or well, let's say two, I'm okay with that I understand that sometimes you won't be able to get them is condos when you're dealing with the HOA docs, the resale certificate, because some of them are only 30 days. They're only good for 30 days.
Oh my God.
So that one I understand. And then the other one could be your septic items where they've already pumped, but you don't have the report yet. And those types of things, I get that. But everything else should be in there. And I really love the ones where brokers even put in offer instructions, upload offer instructions, with details and stuff like that. Those are very, very helpful. And as buyer brokers, you should be starting in the supplements, looking at everything, looking at those details, reading those details. And then before you're submitting offers, now you have a lot more information that you don't have to make a phone call for. Definitely you want to make phone calls. I'm not saying that, but please, listing brokers, have your legal in there. And then don't forget to upload it when you make, if you miss those things when you upload the listing, you're automatically going to get a $50 fine if you're missing the legal. So please don't forget that. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Definitions. A MLS means Northwest Multiple Listing Service, and B, sell includes a contract to sell, an exchange or contract to exchange, or an option to purchase. Firm need not submit to seller any offers to lease, rent, or enter into any agreement other than for sale of the property. So this all falls under, okay, so this is one thing that MLS forms, right? It's contract written helped by attorneys, but also at the same time, we have statutory duties, right? To our clients. What is one element of our statutory duties that actually conflicts with just what we just read? Because they said we don't have to
Present all offers.
we'll present all offers, but there's another piece to it too. You're super close.
was discussing about leases and whatnot.
It's present all written communications too. So it's not just offers. So if someone were to actually send you, hey, here's an offer to lease, I want to lease this property, it's for sale. And you're like, we're not leasing, I'm not sending this to my seller. It says in the form we don't have to, but yet your statutory duty says you do. You have to pass on all written communications and information, anything,
Including love letters.
including love letters. Did Oregon reverse that?
Oh, did they? 'Cause
Yeah.
They prevented it and now
They had
required
to
it.
reverse it. Yeah, because buyers went to the courts and actually demanded that that's not fair. So yeah, they reversed that. So Oregon, you have to present them. This is why we have to provide in our SkySlope transaction files, all communications. And the number one thing the Department of Licensing looks for now in our audits are copies of relevant communications in the transaction file. So that means text messages, and that's always the hardest one. And then emails or voicemails. You have voicemails that are pertinent information. If someone's like, oh, Levin, you going to the Seahawks game on Sunday? You are? Oh, that's cool. Like, leaving a voicemail, stuff like that. Like, oh, that's from a client. I better upload in the file. No, that's not what they're looking for. Levin, I think we want to skip that home inspection. I know we have it scheduled, but man, I really don't want to spend the $700 right now. Is that what's definitely relevant? You would want something like that uploaded into your SkySlope file. You can do that. All you have to do is forward those items to your SkySlope email address that each transaction file makes and creates. The hardest one is text messages. Some phones will let you edit all text messages and then you can forward it to an email. When you do it that way, the Department of Licensing said no. Because what that does in that process, it actually just lines every word like in a note document. It literally just puts every single text back to back, and they have no idea who said what. So I was told to tell brokers not to do that because they won't accept that.
So how are we supposed to do the text now?
Screenshots. You can take a screenshot, forward it, scroll, screenshot, forward it, scroll. I know it is painstaking, but until someone like really creates a better app out there, I haven't found a good one yet. There's a couple of them I've tested out and they were terrible. So we'll look into that and try to see. Dang it, that was probably Jeannie Simpson too. Anyways, so we'll dig into that a little bit more and see if anyone has a better app way to get it. But the text messages, those have to be added to our file. And during our last couple audits, brokers got warnings. They got warnings for not having any written, no communication in the file. So they're watching it. And
Text messages and emails.
Yep. Anything that's relevant and pertinent to the transaction, we are supposed to keep it. Also last night, Annie touched on the fact that she had a class for some hours with the Department of Licensing, with the auditors specifically, and that they are going to be looking for every single audit for the buyer's representation, no, buyer brokerage services agreement. They're going to be looking for those in every single buyer side sale. And the key element they're going to look at is when was it signed? If you have written communication and you have proof that you were working with that client like well before you had it signed, and the ones that she said that are gonna be the easiest are, here's the buyer brokerage services agreement signed, and here's the offer signed on the same hour, right? That is what they're gonna look for, specifically because they know that you work with people well before you just go write an offer.
Not always.
Not always. I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes it happens. But majority of the time, it is not that way. So she flat out said that they're going to, oh, here is Jeannie. So I'm gonna take her call because we want to know this answer. Good morning, Jeannie. Hello? Hello? No, didn't work. Maybe I should try again. So just be prepared, you know, and make sure that she explained it this way. When you're driving down the freeway going 75 and all of a sudden you pass and you see a stator taking radar, what do? You immediately start slowing down and you're like,
Hopefully it's not me.
I hope today's my lucky day, right? Because like they got me, right? We're gonna have a lot of situations where sometimes, you know, things are gonna get sent and signed and you're gonna do a deal and then you're gonna go, oh no, I forgot my buyer brokerage services agreement. And what are you gonna do? You just you're gonna have to get it signed. You're gonna have to get it signed because the future is going to be brokers who are getting sued because their buyer never signed one.
So when does that go into effect? The first year right now?
January 1st.
Okay, that's what
Yep. Good morning, this is Eric. Hello? Oh, it's hanging up. She doesn't have service or so. I don't know, that's weird. It says Northwest MLS too, so I know it's Jeannie. All right, so she said that they did warn, you know, that these are the things they're going to be looking for, so let's go ahead and make sure. Now she's calling me from her cell. Hey, Jeannie. I can hear you. That's okay. No, we're dying for this answer because we're doing class right now. So it's like, I wanted to make sure that I got it from you. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Okay, I just pulled from there for the, let's see, view and download a sample packet of revised forms from Legal Bulletin 224. It's not updated. Is it on the red lines, maybe? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Yep, this one, the red lines have it. The red lines are adjusted. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just pulled it. Weird. Nope. Nope, just pulling straight from legal bulletin 224. Yep. Yeah, do view, download sample packet of revised forms. Or view forms changes. No, that's red line. Yeah. Let's see. Unless it's in my cookies, maybe. Term. List date. Oh yeah, no, it does. Okay, that's weird. It's working. Yeah. Well, I did it this morning. I did it first thing this morning. I don't know, but that's weird. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, all good. I will. Thanks, Jeannie. Okay, bye. All right, got it straight there. We got it. That's weird. So they just updated it last night. So literally, if you pulled it yesterday, then you would have got the other update or the old forms, you know, from the first time they've updated. But yeah, they have adjusted it. It is now 90 days. It's going to be starting on the 1st. Anybody signing anything right now, then, you know, you're going to want to probably have to use your Form 18 still to amend your dates, but anything prior to the 1st, you'll still have to use the old 1A. So, but it's good to know. Now we know for sure is updated to 90 days. All right, let's continue. Right, so term, seller hereby grants to listing firm the exclusive right to list and sell the property from the date of mutual acceptance of this agreement, effective date until midnight of listing term. How long should you put in here?
We've been doing 6 months.
Now that you know that it's not, you may not even go live on the market till 90 days. Is that changing your timelines at all for how long you're gonna have this good for?
No.
No, because you're not putting it on the market until 90 days.
Well, it depends on when you're putting it on the
Wow.
market, because you want to make, I mean, things are sitting on the market longer. Even if you list it at 90 days, it might theoretically be on the market for another 90 days.
Yeah. I wanted people to think about this because if now that it's 90 days and you put a 90-day term in here, you did 90 calendar days and they wait 90 days, you're gonna have an expired listing. So be really careful and mindful now about this process, since that is now extended 60 days longer than it was previously. So really watch your timelines. 6 months, you know, I mean, vacant land, people know that's probably a year. Commercial, that's a year still. I think 6 months is still probably pretty fine. The only time maybe you might look at it to be a little bit longer is maybe you are maxing out the 90 days and maybe you got to extend it once and you got to use an 18, you know, at that point. Obviously it's a case by case scenario, but try to stick with your 6 months. If this agreement expires while seller is a party to a purchase and sale agreement for the property, the listing term shall automatically extend until the sale is closed or the purchase and sale agreement is terminated. So it's exactly the same with the new buyer brokerage services agreement. That would be same way. If you end up getting into contract, it automatically extends it through that closing. All right, agency. Let's see. Kristen, want to do agency?
A pamphlet, seller acknowledges receipt of the pamphlet entitled Real Estate Brokerage in Washington. B, listing broker, listing firm appoints blank to represent seller, also known as listing broker. This agreement creates an agency relationship with listing broker and any of firm's managing brokers who supervise supervising broker during the listing term. No other brokers affiliated with firm are agents of seller.
Okay, so here's the information where it breaks it apart. obviously it's got a little longer line here, you know, for you to be able to add someone else that is going to be representing the seller. For those of you who have teams and you have like your buyer's broker and stuff like that, now I would not be putting them on there.
What if they host an open house for you?
If they,
Real estate service?
no, well, it is, but their purpose is to work with buyers. They're not representing sellers. They're still not representing sellers, so that's totally fine. Yeah, that's separate. I wouldn't be putting your, you know, buyer's broker on here anyway, because in the event you get a buyer, you can actually go ahead, have your buyer broker represent the buyer, and they'll represent the buyer, and they're totally fine to do that. So I would stick to that type of plan. But if you get another broker in the office, you're gone on vacation, you're in Mexico on the beach, and you have people, you know, who want to show, or excuse me, you have a seller and you're representing the seller, and they're listening, and they need you to take care of the listing and present offers to the seller while you're gone and do work, or show up, be there for the seller for repairs, or I don't know, any other thing, and you're doing brokerage services, they should be added. We're gonna talk further about that, you know, with Aaron and Northwest MLS, and continue conversations with Annie to see, you know, what's the best process. Do we end up adding additional, you know, 42 additional brokers addendum to a deal? Do we do our own new, like, type of an addendum, maybe a John Scott addendum to this? So stay tuned on that, but,
Do all those additional brokers need to sign as well?
yeah. Well, looks like we got, I know, it's very interesting. Chats. All right, we got a couple questions. Eric, you don't need to use, well, I can't read a chat in the middle of class. Okay. Limited dual agency. Let's see, Jim, you want to do this one?
Sure, limited dual agency. Listing broker as a limited dual agent. Can't read through the sample.
If initialed.
If initial consents, listing broker and supervising broker act as limited dual agents in the sale of the property
To,
to a buyer that listing broker and that
also represents.
it also represents.
Yeah.
Seller acknowledges it as a limited dual agent.
Yeah.
RCW 18866 prohibits listing broker from advocating terms favorable to seller in the
To the detriment
of
of the buyer.
the buyer. Limits listing brokers agreement seller.
Yeah. So it further limits listing brokers' representation of the seller. So this really, you know, this is the thing that, you know, it's gonna be limited dual agency come the first of the year. We talked about that on the previous classes, and this is just how it's going to be phrased. The seller will have to initial into the middle of the document now. So using transaction desk, it is supposed to automatically, you know, throw the seller's initials into the box. So it's going to have a separate location where they are going to initial for just that clause. Saying it's okay, that they acknowledge. We're a large firm. We do a lot of business. You guys constantly have cross sales. We constantly, Jim, myself, and Tony are constantly limited dual agents. It's been that way previously.
Right. So how does this change that? Because how I'm interpreting this is basically like I've done dual agency before this years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And where I represent both buyer and seller, or even before that, there was no buyer representation.
Yeah. Well, this is listing broker represents, or it breaks it apart and tells that the listing broker and supervising broker are acting as limited dual agents in the sale. So me, Jim, Tony.
If I sell.
If you have the listing
And somebody else sells,
and Levin has the buyer,
right,
so
right, and that's,
us three are limited dual agents,
But
that's
you-
the same.
but yeah, you always were dual, in the old farm, you were dual agents.
Yeah, but the newest thing that's about this new law is from January 1st forward. If you were gonna represent the buyer and the seller,
Right,
you would still now be an actual limited dual agent.
right,
So that's the new classification.
right, and that's, yeah, because before you were a dual agent, now you're a
Correct.
limited dual agent, which really still has the same legal liabilities
Yeah,
as the old one does.
yeah.
It's just that there seems to be, I don't.
They're clarifying something. The key word is what? What's the key word that's added?
Limited.
Limited. Why is it limited? Let's talk about it.
You're limited to what you can do.
Why? I want you to represent me. I'm a buyer. Levin's got the seller. He represents, the seller and the listing.
Well, it spells it out in that last
It's-
line. You can't
yeah, it
advocate
says-
terms that are favorable to the seller, but to the detriment of the buyer.
Right. Yeah, but that rule hasn't changed. You couldn't do that before. Oh. Let's see. Is it necessary to have sellers sign? But we can still be a dual agent for both buyer and seller.
You'd have to acknowledge that.
Well, seller has to sign this, yes, because they have to now initial and confirm that they understand the 2 points. The points are myself, Jim, and Tony would be acting as limited dual agents to the party because we're all under the same firm in the event that one or two different brokers in our firm represented a separate party.
So you're gonna have this signed at the beginning, you're not gonna
Yes.
wait, come back to this at all?
Well,
No.
yeah, this is the listing agreement.
This
Yeah.
is, yeah, you
Yeah,
will
you
have to
have
get
this
this initial
signed.
now.
It's-
And then at the same time, it's giving you the disclosure to the fact about the 1886 60 it's now going to the RCW and saying, hey, seller, in this revised code, of Washington, that duties of a seller's broker are to advocating terms favorable to you. And it can't be to the detriment of a buyer in a sale of limited dual agency. So it's now it's a whole new upfront separate disclosure. Before this was in here. This was in the old 1A.
Right.
It always has, but it was just it was just there and they just initialed and signed, they signed the form like normal.
Right.
Last question.
Well, because the old one was, the seller had to initial or sign off on you representing a buyer didn't they have to, it seems like they had to do that. Cause I always disclose that if you don't want to be a dual agency, or you want me, don't tell me what your bottom line is. But as a kind of theoretical Chinese wall, but
Well, I mean, yeah, you're still gonna handle those conversations and everything's still the same, about limited dual agency, right? In the future, you're still gonna be doing exactly the same way. You can't, what was the laws prior, and then what we've been doing for dual agency, what were the two things you have to have?
what, for dual agency?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, before, if you're talking just recently,
Mhm.
before this, you had to have a licensed listing agreement, you had to have a licensed buyer brokerage, now called service agreement.
Yeah, you had to have a 41 buyer's agency agreement and a 1A listing agreement in order to have
Right.
agency and representation to each client, right? Both clients.
Right,
That's not really changing. What's changing is the definitions and the clarity. And now that the seller is gonna have to immediately in the listing initial to agreeing to the understanding that the firm in the event, because you know what, we've had a lot of times where sellers were like, and have you ever had this question like, so does that mean only John L. Scott brokers can show my house?
yeah, I've had it.
Right?
Yeah.
Buyers do this too. How many times have you heard this? Oh man, I'm so sorry. I would have went with you, but the listing was with ABC. And you're like, I could show ABC, that doesn't matter. There's confusion to the public. There's not a lot of clarity in that. So now they're putting more clarity in the transaction, and this is one of the ways, and that is exactly why they've renamed dual agency to limited dual agency, because it truly is limited. We
Well,
can't, huh?
how is it limited? Cause I'm trying to think of.
Well, it's limited mainly in the ways of if you're representing a buyer, and we talked about this before, you're representing a buyer, they have to have, and they're having a home inspection. Are you going into that house with blindfolds, earplugs, and something over your mouth so you can't talk? Like, you're gonna be there and you're gonna hear facts about material defects to the property. And the buyer doesn't ask for them. Or they're asking your opinion, and now you like, there's one of the biggest
How do you?
booby traps in this whole system. How do you handle that?
Yeah, because that's a perfect example, because I'm thinking, where does it really come to play? And you just gave the perfect example, like,
Mhm.
that's huge.
Yeah,
I mean, because suddenly now you gotta go tell the seller, oh, by the way, because you're held to the standard as if the seller,
yeah.
that I as you now know what
Yeah.
the defects are.
Okay, let's flip it. Go to the inspection. You're there you're doing dual agency. The buyer's like, oh, this house is amazing. The home inspector's like, he scratches his head, he's like, I can't find even a light bulb burnt out in this house. It is so clean. This is the cleanest inspection I've ever done in the history of my 25 years of doing inspections. Buyer's like, yeah, let's do the 35R. Let's go ahead and say, I want $50,000 off the price. What are you gonna do? You're gonna write it.
You're gonna call your attorney.
What
Because
do you do in that situation? Is that detrimental to the seller?
Most definitely.
You see why it's hard, and why there's people, they've talked about this ever since I got in the business. I remember probably 10 days in the business. Someone's, oh, don't worry, you'll never do a dual agency. The state's gonna get rid of it. The state's getting rid of it anyway. Don't worry. That's what I was told.
Right.
It was 24 years ago. Question?
Well, I was gonna say, if I was gonna do like dual agency,
Mhm.
I would wanna like reach out to you and be like, hey, Eric, I'm gonna do this like transaction, dual agency. Can you like help me out? Like if can the inspector send you the report, and like maybe have the buyer reach out to you, or just something that wouldn't put me in that position of like being uncomfortable, between the buyer and the seller. I don't know.
Isn't it
Well-
better to do the buyer unrepresented and explain to them that you have a fiduciary duty? I mean, you have a duty of honesty, to them and fair dealings, but that technically you're representing the seller because you signed a contract with them before.
Vanessa, literally, I've had 3 conversations in this past week about dual agency. Let me rewind just 1 second, just to help kind of really put this all together. Why do most buyers want to go with a dual agency scenario? Why?
They think they're gonna save money.
They think they're saving money. They think they're gonna get a good deal.
The agent will push your offer more
Yeah.
to the seller.
Yeah. Yep. Now, in a non-competitive marketplace, we probably don't see it as often. You guys, 3 times this week, I have had brokers in this situation, and the listing, I'm one of them, it's been dead. It's been on for 90-something days. It's money. It comes down to the dollar. They think that, hey, we want to write it 50 low, 70 low, whatever. If there's no compensation on the other side, then, we could probably get this pushed through. And sellers, to their net, they're like, yeah, maybe they'll do this. So this is the reason why typically buyers are trying to do something like this.
Okay, I was gonna ask, well, what if you have a buyer that you already have your buyer agency sign with them, right? So how can you do an unrepresented buyer if you already have that existing agreement?
Yeah, in those situations, I would say you're stuck with that, because you're talking about in the event you have a listing come on and they're like, this is our perfect house,
Yeah.
right?
And you already had that agreement signed.
Yeah, I mean, that exact scenario is rare. It does happen, but it's rare. We would we would really take it case by case. I mean,
So why would you do, given what you're saying, cause I assume, I mean, the pitfall you just said is huge, it's like, you might as well just go get your attorney.
no.
And so why would you do dual agency? Cause I mean, it's such a legal pitfall.
Well, why you do dual agency is because when you're representing a seller to begin with, you're trying to sell that home for the seller. You're doing your best, right?
Right.
You can still do it. And what Vanessa brought up is the exact scenario I said in which that's the route we took on two of the deals. One of them didn't end up working out. They were like way apart, way apart, unrealistic. But for two of the other ones, that's exactly what they did. They did unrepresented, because first and foremost, I was like stumped, and I questioned, I'm like, wait a minute, I have not heard a single broker, I haven't heard Annie, I haven't heard our attorney, I haven't heard Jeannie, I haven't heard any of the attorneys or no one speak about what happens with a deal in 2023, dual agency, and it closes in 2024 and becomes limited dual agency. I asked last night in the class, and Annie started cracking up. She's like, thanks, Eric. Of course you bring up a question like that in the middle of this class with over 200 people. Because she's like, yeah, no one's brought that up yet. No one's even thought about that. And she's like, and I told her, I'm like, well, what I instructed our brokers to do is to go ahead and go unrepresented, because unrepresentation is going to continue. They would not need a buyer brokerage services agreement come 2024. And you could still you could sell the seller's house. The seller wants to sell. And they worked out an amendment, a Form 18, for just selling to that buyer, for adjusting the compensation to offset the price to make everybody happy.
So, it makes sense when you're like the listing agent and you know you have the opportunity to do that, but like, what if you're like at an open house and the person wants to write an offer, you're not the listing agent, but doesn't want to sign that buyer agency agreement? What would you do in that case?
In that case, you cannot. This is the law. I mean, there's no gray in
Give them
this.
the flyer that
I'm
says
telling you
here's the
guys,
law.
there's no gray in this whatsoever. Whatsoever. It is black, white. What was that?
if it's an open house and somebody wants to write an offer and they don't want to commit to a long-term commitment with you, why don't you just do your agency agreement for that subject property, and then if they don't want to talk to you any further, you're done.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's because one of the teachers of the real estate classes from Windermere, he was a Japanese gentleman, said that he was doing buyer agency, but he was doing one listing buyer.
Yeah, Mark Kitabashi.
Yeah, so and I thought, so that would be the way to handle it.
There's a couple ways, right? The first and foremost, what you always have to hold on to is it's the law. You cannot represent a client without it. And you know what's so funny? And it's not scary. You guys have been doing this already with your sellers. How many of you guys have had a deal where you closed and you represented a seller and you didn't even have a listing agreement and you got paid? Did that happen? No. You can't represent a seller without a listing agreement.
How far back do you want to go?
Above 97. So see, we've already been doing this. It's just that we have to now you have to treat it the same way. You have to have the buyer's brokerage services agreement signed no matter what. And you have to remember there are two elements in the agreement about exclusive and non-exclusive.
I think this is gonna be I really like the transition, and I don't think it's gonna be hard. And it's gonna be especially easier for first-time home buyers because it's their first time really buying a house.
Mhm.
So it's okay, so this is how it works for the people who bought before. They're gonna be oh, it's gonna be kind of interesting, you know, just
Yeah.
their reaction to how the law has changed.
Yeah, the laws have changed. The laws in Washington are changing. And we got weeks left.
But they're changing in reaction to what went on nationally. And
Yeah,
that's
but
the way it works.
can you see how there's no way in heck that a buyer can't say they don't understand how compensation works now moving forward?
Right, well, yeah.
Really? I mean, it's gonna be
basically,
very, very, very clear. It's not only in their agreement, but it's even on the front page of, you know, of the purchase and sale agreement. The thing where most brokers are gonna trip up is they're going to be signing these different types of agreements, and I understand that the clients themselves are gonna be very like, wait, I know I signed something, but was it exclusive? Was it non-exclusive? A buyer can sign unlimited, non-exclusive agreements. Right? If it's non-exclusive, and it's really gonna come down to the terms for how long and for the area and the compensation. You cannot write in the agreement anything like ranges. You can't put ranges. Don't even try that one. If you basically are saying you will take $2,500, you guys know what I'm saying? I'll be fine if it pays 2,500. You know, but normally I charge 3,000, but for you, you know, I'd be fine if that, you know, if that's the case, I would do that. Don't put 2,500 to 3,000. You can't put a range. You will have to put the amount you're willing to take, and you'll have to adjust and mark the box that in the event seller is offering over the compensation, that it will go to the firm. You'll have to mark that box if that's what you're saying to the client. You can't say TBD. This is the questions we had last night. You should have heard some of them. It was scary.
but the range is, so you can't put like, okay, you know, I was showing a client, you know, and he's for expensive property, and they said, okay, they're only asking 2%. And I said,
Don't do percents in class, just say dollars.
2,000.
Yeah, $2,000.
well, I'm looking at what's going on in the market, but so $2,000, and the others were asking compensation of 2,500. And so I said on the wire brokerage service agreement, the one now, because that's all I had to give,
Yeah,
is I go from 2,000 to 2,500.
you did a range.
I did a range.
Yeah,
So it just-
You cannot put ranges. In your listing agreements, are you doing a range for a seller? For the LOC?
well, but that's.
I'll do this or that. Why?
Can we put 3% and then
Don't say
choose-
percent.
Or I mean $3,000 and say somebody is paying 2,500. Do we have to hold the buyer to that, or is that optional? Like if I were to present it as, hey, you know, I charge 3,000, and we find one that's 2,500, is that now my decision to leave it like that, or does it have to be the 3%?
If it has to be 3, yeah, so you guys, what you charge is what you charge,
Right.
okay? Our attorneys have always said, because your deductibles are like $1,500, you should never be doing a transaction if it's not paying at least what your deductibles have been. This has been like the golden rule forever, okay? I mean, the other thing is you cannot do pro bono. Why?
Sure,
The
there's
errors
always-
and omissions won't cover you.
Yeah, that's one, but also you're not an attorney, nor have you played one on TV that I know of. You're not an attorney. You can't do deals for free. E&O would they would not cover you. If you all of a sudden got sued, they would be like, well, good luck. Let us know how that
But
turns
it's
out.
like your own transaction that you're buying, right? That they don't cover
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
But that's.
well, I mean,
But
case by
Eric-
case. Yep,
Eric,
other question.
didn't Annie also say that we want to be careful with, let's say that on our brokerage service agreement form, we're saying $3,000. and the home LLC is $2,500. And if we choose to say, okay, well, buyer, we will accept what they are offering, we would have to do that with every client. Otherwise, it can come back to say that you're discriminating against certain buyers if you're not giving that to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stretch. It can, if you really were wishy-washy on what what you do, I mean, it's not impossible for something like that to happen. I think it's pretty unlikely, but I mean, who's to say who could file a complaint? When I got into the business, many years ago, there were these two brokers that said, you buy a home with us, you get a free computer. And they were advertising it. And I mean, these jokers did this kind of stuff all the time, right? And the free car wash, all the funniest things. But anyways, one of their buyers got mad because they had bought a home literally before this ad came out. They filed a complaint with the DOL. The DOL came and sent up, an investigation, and they had to buy that client a computer. And also it happened to a couple other clients later on. They left our firm, which was good, but they got in trouble again from the DOL, I found out, because they did another thing. So it's not impossible, but let's go back to the speeding past the state patrol, right? You're speeding. If you got, you kind of have to choose your path, and if it happens, it's going to happen. But you can decide on a case-by-case scenario to lower your amount that you have written into the buyer brokerage services agreement, and you will have to amend it for that listing. But you cannot put ranges, so don't fall into that trap. Don't put TBD. Don't put, what was the other one? Oh gosh, there was one other person that asked a question and I saw everybody's eyes roll. Can I put, what does he say? Whatever's offered in listing or something like that was the yeah. No. So you're going to have to be firm on that. All right.
Question on number 4 here.
Yeah.
Does the seller have to initial this, or can they decline and say, no, I will not allow dual agency?
You will not allow limited dual agency from the firm?
Right. Are they allowed? Well, the A is talking about the listing broker.
Yeah.
B is about the firm.
Yes, B.
So they can't, looks like they can't opt out.
But you see, this goes to this. This initial is
for A.
Is for A.
So do they have to sign that?
Yeah, they have to initial this.
Is there any opportunity for a seller to say, no, I will not allow for limited dual agency?
I mean, in that scenario, if the seller says that, I'm gonna say, are you allergic to money? I'm sorry, but we have a top producing firm. We have like 170 licensed brokers here.
No, but A, the way I read it, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't speak a whole lot of legalese, but it looks to me like it's speaking of the listing broker. John Smith also represents the buyer. It's not about Eric as supervisor. I mean, you're lumped in there, but it looks like.
Right, I agree.
Do you?
Yeah, no, yeah.
So
how I'm hearing she's saying, and I agree, is they're initially allowing the listing agent by today's terms to act as the selling agent. Only now they're calling, which is, and so.
Okay, yeah.
So what she's saying is, which even today, they could say, no, we don't want you being a dual agent to the listing agent.
Okay.
And so I don't see that, and unfortunately, if my eyes aren't working that right now, so unfortunately, if we can't write anything, we'd have to say to them, well, you need to go get an attorney and write something up.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So if
You're
they-
correct. It is
so it seems to me like that's an optional.
it is an optional. It's whether or not the
hasn't it
seller
always
is going
been
to
like
allow
that?
you, what?
Hasn't it always been like that? Because you guys are managing brokers. So
Yeah,
isn't it kind of a how you present it as in addition to myself, you get my 3 managing brokers like in your corner as well.
Yeah, but remember, this one is listing broker. See
Oh,
right
the
here?
bottom one. Oh, okay. I thought we were
See-
talking about the limited.
See,
Okay.
this is you. This is you. This is us,
Mhm.
but this is seller's consent to listing broker and us. Me, Tony, and Jim acting as limited dual agents of the sale of property to a buyer that listing broker also represents.
Yeah, not the firm.
It's not
also
just the firm,
represents-
yeah, it's so,
Specifically, the
you're
listing
correct.
broker is representing both buyer and seller.
yes. So this is optional.
Okay.
So this is the part
Yeah,
where
I feel like this
sellers
is
are
not very
going
clear.
to
They're gonna be missing.
make the decision. So I know, see, this is the part, it's so hard not having the manual.
Yeah,
Because the
that was-
manual is gonna describe, the manual is gonna give us probably a phrase like this big.
Yeah.
For just this section to really connect the dots. Because see, if the seller doesn't initial here, when we get down to the other section. For the compensation. For
Yeah, me
dual,
too.
right here, if lease broker represents both seller and buyer, this will not be filled in.
So
So you-
say they don't want you to do dual agency and
Uh-huh.
you refer it to another agent, like I refer it to Jim or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
So that way we're 2 separate people in the same office. Is there any disclosures that we would need to provide? You know, if I'm saying, Jim, hey, I got the sign call, they want to write up an offer.
Okay, so this is another thing that was brought up last night. And see, this is good, Vanessa, because what you're touching on is now, who's paying you now, first of all? When you get the listing and you sell it? The seller, right? And you represent the seller. When you're getting a referral, where does that money also come from?
Same.
You do have to disclose that.
But when you're representing a buyer, even the compensation agreement says, if not this, you're responsible. The money's still coming from the seller. I mean, the compensation, so I don't. but
And
yeah,
they
you-
already agreed to that amount.
Right,
They have agreed to that amount, but they've agreed to the amount on this agreement saying what percent or a dollar amount you're getting, and when they get that settlement statement, if it is different than what is here,
But the
then,
referral fees, they don't show up on the settlement statement.
yeah, that's true, huh? But you are getting those funds.
But you-
It's a tough,
yeah, because that actually brings up a valid point,
you're,
because you're honesty and good faith. If you're representing the buyer, you're referred to represent the buyer, the compensation agreement is gonna say what they get. And it seems like you'd have them be asked or required to disclose, I'm also getting this amount from there, and if you don't,
yeah, you mean seller, in
Yeah.
this, like her scenario, she's
Correct.
talking about the seller.
right,
You're like, nah, I'm not they don't wanna do limited dual agency, I'm gonna go ahead and refer it,
right.
give it to Alberto, he can represent them. And you can give me what, 25% or 30%, since it's just, here you go, you're writing them up, you didn't have to do anything. So,
So that
But you-
30% referral would have to be disclosed to the seller, even though it's not changing how much they're netting and it's not gonna show up on the settlement statement.
But,
yeah,
But I guess it's kind of a slippery slope, but I would think that the 30 or 25% referral fee would have to be disclosed to the buying to the buyers? I mean, wouldn't it? I mean, because you're basically, I mean, you're getting a commission. Well, no, actually, it wouldn't, because they're paying compensation, but
No, I mean, in the case of the disclosure, and dealing with good faith, like your good faith and honesty, it really falls in on that, and you are supposed to disclose that you are getting those funds, and that's exactly what Annie said last night. So stay tuned on that one too. We're gonna keep on like going over these types of scenarios, but for the sake of class, we better continue. We're gonna be here all day.
Sounds like
Let's
we're
see.
gonna need a full day.
just to talk
Pretty
about
much.
disclosure.
Okay, so limited dual agency, section 4A, listing broker as limited dual agent. If initial, oh no, that's the one we just
Yeah,
did, but now firm limited dual agency. So if the property is sold to a buyer represented by one of the firm's brokers, other than listing broker, listing firm's buyer's broker, seller consents to any supervising broker who also supervises listing firms, buyer's broker acting as a limited dual agent. So there's the firm limited dual agency. Section A is going to be, does the seller agree and want to be, is okay with limited dual agency from their listing broker, also representing a buyer. So this is optional. All right, list date. Here it is. Firm shall submit this listing, including the property information on the attached listing input sheets and photographs of the property, collectively listing data, to be published on MLS on list date, which date shall not be more than 90 days from the effective date. Seller acknowledges that exposure of the property to the open market through MLS will increase the likelihood that seller will receive fair market value for the property. Accordingly, prior to the list date, firm and seller shall not promote or advertise the property in any manner whatsoever, including but not limited to yard or other signs, flyers, websites, emails, texts, social media, mailers, magazines, newspapers, open houses, previews, showings, or tours. Seller shall not materially interfere with listing firms' marketing of the property. To address any privacy or similar concerns, seller may instruct listing broker to limit marketing by not displaying the property address or map location on the internet, by eliminating any and all internet advertising, and by opposing specific showing requirements and other similar restrictions. Now that it's increasing to 90 days, it's definitely gonna be harder to keep the lid on, our sellers and being quiet about advertising, talking about the listing. Make sure that, part of your marketing plan or your seller consultations that you are explaining that, exactly what's the best way to, make sure you're sharing it from your John L. Scott link, so they don't share it from Zillow or Redfin or anywhere else, because then you're giving away, they're giving away all of your leads and your contacts and the potential of you being able to converse with a buyers. So don't give away your leads. Don't let your sellers do this. And they do it all the freaking time. It's even happened to me. Like if I didn't have the conversation and tell them, hey, don't share, I'm going to be giving you the link to share on your Facebook and your Instagram and your social medias and to your friends and family. Like if, just, hey, there's only one first impression, don't forget, I want to make sure that we do this right so that we can corral all the buyers and all of the conversations are in our direction so that we can help get clients for it, right? So just make sure you guys are doing that. Countless times I see our own brokers sharing Redfin links to their own listing, even for like their open houses. Like, oh, hey, I can't do an open house this weekend. Can anyone do an open house for this? And they send it out and it's Redfins. I'm like, you're literally giving away your leads. Please stop that. Fair housing, number 6, seller acknowledges that local, state, and federal fair housing laws prohibit discrimination based on sex, marital status, sexual orientation, gender, identity, race, creed, color, religion, caste, national origins, citizenship or immigration status, families with children status, familial status, honorable discharge veteran or military status, the presence of any sensory, mental, or physical disability, or the use of a support or service animal by a person with a disability. Compensation, seller acknowledges that there are no standard compensation rates, and compensation in this agreement is fully negotiable and not set by law. If during the listing term, seller sells the property and the sale closes or the sale fails to close due to seller's breach of the terms of the purchase and sale agreement, seller shall pay compensation as follows. There it is, all packaged, nice and neat. So make sure you guys are not saying anything to the effect that, oh, here are the standard, compensation rates. Here's what my firm requires me to charge. Oh my goodness, what are some of the other ones that are terrible? You guys come to the sales meeting and you'll see on that little pop quiz. Question, Zoom people?
So it has to be, this is what I charge.
Yes. Yep. Your listing, this is what I charge. We did, on Monday, we did conversations about the dialogue with sellers. You can rewatch that on our recorded YouTube channel. It's in our private channel there, so make sure that, if you missed it, to jump in on that, because we definitely have had lots of conversations around that, to how to talk about this and the best ways. And Annie absolutely did like, being able to show the seller your comps and what did the comps offer for compensation, to give the seller an idea of what is going on around them. I'm working with corporate to see if we can get Cloud CMA to add that into the reports automatically. It would be amazing, because then we could highlight those, and it's all in our reports already. So I'm really hoping that we can get that update to happen soon. Okay, listing firm compensation, you're gonna fill that in. If the buyer is not represented by a buyer brokerage firm, the listing firm compensation shall be % of the sales price or dollar amount equal to the amount in subsection 7AI, if not filled in. So this is your amount that you charge in section 1. Section 2, how much would go here? If you did $2,500 here, let's say you did $3,000 here, and you are going to, if the buyer's not represented, how much would you put in this line?
Maybe $6,000 or $5,000.
Yeah, that's the total. Out of all of these boxes, right? Out of all of these boxes, this 50 and 51 are the only ones that are the combined total amount you would get in that event. Now, I think it's a good idea that rather than predetermining what you would change in this amount, is that I would say stick to your full amount on what you normally would charge for doing a deal and there's an unrepresented buyer. Why do I say that?
You mean do A1 plus B1, essentially?
Why would we put probably double? Why would we probably double it? Why would we do this?
Because if this unrepresented buyer wants to negotiate the dollars and cents term, you have somewhere to go.
100%. That's exactly why. If we know that, why do buyers want to work with the listing broker? It's the dollar. It's to save money most of the time, or to win. But Andrew's exactly right. If you immediately cut this, you might be cutting deeper pockets or something later that might not make the deal work. So I think it's a good idea to do the same thing you would do for a buyer, just like we talked about. In the event that you're going to adjust that later, you adjust it later. But if you immediately are cutting it from the beginning, you could end up having, some issues. So just
not to mention, you still have to facilitate it all for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because they're unrepresented doesn't mean that they're not extra work.
Right. Yeah, of course. Okay. Oh, but one last tip for this, unrepresented buyers. Do you still think it's a good idea that you go to a home inspection with an unrepresented buyer? What do you guys think?
Find a babysitter.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's the same type of scenario. You owe duties to your seller. It could definitely cause some issues. It's the same thing. So just be really, really careful about that one. Vanessa, did you have another question?
No.
Okay. All right, section B, buyer brokerage firm compensation. Percent of the sales price or dollar amount to a cooperating member of MLS representing the buyer brokerage firm compensation, which includes another broker affiliated with listing firm who represents the buyer, or if the listing broker represents both seller and the buyer as a limited dual agent, percent of the sales price or dollar amount equal to the amount in subsection 7B, if not filled in. This is remember, this is the half. So don't forget, don't get confused. Because if you leave it blank, it is just this amount. If you mess up and leave this one blank and you do represent the buyer, how much are you getting? How much, Jim?
0.
Nothing. You're getting nothing else additionally. Yeah, you're only getting what you get in here. I've already heard of a deal from another managing broker where they signed this, right? They left it blank. They got an unrepresented buyer. They discounted it. You see where this is going? Savvy seller, very savvy seller, closing day. Oh, the calculations are wrong. How so? Well, in my listing agreement, send over, it should only be this amount. No, that's not right. We agreed in the purchase and sale agreement to reduce because of that. Remember? Oops. Yeah. So broker had to reduce their side more and barely made anything on the deal. So don't.
But they learned a lot.
But they did learn a lot, Vanessa.
Hard enough.
Yep. So be really careful. You got to fill this in correctly, and you have to have the conversations with your seller up front about that compensation rates and compensation in this agreement is fully negotiable and not set by any law.
When will we get these forms? Before?
Yeah, right before the first. It's literally like the day or 2 days before. That's it. But they're not valid because the law does not go into effect until January 1.
The questions you're doing, there's a lot of changes, even more than when we went from commission to compensation.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be nice to, rather than kind of, okay, I have a listing on January 2nd, but I'm gonna go through this.
Yeah. All right, so now B3 is if checked, the offer to pay buyer brokerage firm compensation shall extend to licensed brokerage firms that are not members of the MLS. So this is the same from, kind of along the same lines of what happened previously. If you're licensed in the state of Washington and you're in the Spokane MLS or Vancouver or wherever, our MLS, you're in a different MLS, but you basically want to show the house and you can, and you work it out, they can also pay, those firms because they're in the state, they're licensed for the state, they're just not members of the MLS. We did find out last night though, that all of those little MLSs, they're all going to be using Northwest MLS agreements because, well, why, who wants to be the first person to get in Washington to get the lawsuit? Which MLS? None. Yeah, they don't want to be. They're seeing what's going on. It's starting to spread like wildfire right now for more and more lawsuits. Even brokers and their teams are being named right now. some big teams, these giant ones that are doing like, 800 deals, 700 deals a year.
It's essentially a brokerage.
Yeah,
Well, but now you have
but their brokerage is not the full on,
Well,
I
it's
mean,
essentially, they're
yeah.
essentially a firm in themselves.
yeah.
But yeah, the law firms are now looking, going out soliciting
Mhm.
business because we're the deep pockets now.
All right. So, 4, buyer brokerage firm compensation shall be paid as set forth above unless modified by the buyer and buyer brokerage firm in a mutually accepted purchase and sale agreement. The offered amount may not be withdrawn or reduced with respect to a buyer after that buyer or the buyer brokerage firm has notified the listing firm or seller of that buyer's intent to submit an offer. And for 3 calendar days thereafter, buyer brokerage firm is an intended third-party beneficiary of this agreement. So in the event that your seller's like, hey, listen, I know you charge $3,000, but ABC Real Estate said they would do mine for $2,000. Let's meet in the middle. We'll do it for $2,500. And you bend and you go, okay, for you, I will do that since you're also buying with me and we're signing your buyer brokerage services agreement also. Jim?
So I guess I'm curious as to why we're not talking percentage versus dollars.
We can't. Why? Because that is exactly what antitrust is.
Right, but when maybe it's gonna change, but
It's not changing, like we
no,
can't still.
no,
can't.
what I'm saying, Eric, is that we're still, unless the forms change, when I look in there, it still says dollars or percentage. Is that gonna just be now dollars?
No,
So when we go to take a listing agreement, most agents, probably 90% are still gonna go, here's my percentage.
right,
But as compensation, the word that's changed, as I understand, is compensation, not commission. But the compensation still seems to be determined as percentage.
Yeah,
And
that tends to happen, but in a class setting, in a group of independent contractors and brokers, we can't talk that way. Because that falls along the exact reasons of part of the lawsuit.
because they were talking percentage versus, because the percentage still, I'm just trying to find out because
Yeah.
it's like, we're not gonna talk about it, but when we go out to the practice,
Mhm.
then we're talking percentage. We're not saying, okay, here's my flat fee, $30,000.
You can,
Right.
you could say dollar.
Eric is just using a dollar amount that we're not gonna charge $2,500. I mean, in most.
No,
that would be an extreme side,
I
yeah.
understand that, but I'm talking,
It's just, we don't wanna use like a certain percentage each time, which gets around to say like, oh, well, John L. Scott, Kent
But we-
North, they charge
right.
Yeah,
this amount.
Well, I understand that, but
And
it's,
here's the video evidence. that
right, exactly.
shows
Yeah,
that
here's our
Eric is
video
teaching
evidence. I'm
everybody
teaching
that we
everyone.
That this is what we charge.
Exactly.
So he's just trying to avoid a lawsuit.
yeah.
Okay, and same thing, Shelley, I'm not talking about percentages. Okay. Here we go.
Then we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next, expiration of the listing term. If seller shall within, here's the same tail provision, 180 days if not filled in. After the expiration of the listing term, sell the property to any person to whose attention is brought through the signs, advertising, or other action of the listing firm or on information secured directly or indirectly from or through firm during the listing term. Seller will pay firm and buyer brokerage firm the above compensation at closing, provided that if seller pays compensation to other licensed brokerages or brokerage firms in conjunction with a sale, the amount of the compensation payable to two firms shall be reduced by the amount paid to such other listing firm, and the compensation payable to buyer brokerage firm shall be reduced by the amount paid to such other buyer brokerage firm. D, cancellation without legal cause. If seller cancels this agreement without legal cause, seller may be liable for damages incurred by firm as a result of such cancellations, regardless of whether seller pays compensation to another licensed brokerage firm. Additional consent, seller consents to the firm receiving compensation from more than one party and to sharing of compensation between firms, provided that any terms and amounts offered to or by firm are disclosed as required. I'll dive into this RCW deeper and see if this is the part that Amy's talking about. As far as you getting a referral fee. Oops, it won't do it. Oh, duh, because I'm in a protected. Yeah, it won't work. I'm in a blocked document. Property access and key box. Listing firm shall install a key box on the property that holds a key to the property, which may be opened by an electronic key held by members of MLS, their brokers, and affiliated appraiser members of MLS. Unless otherwise agreed in writing or set forth in the attached listing input sheets, firm and other members of MLS shall be entitled to show the property at all reasonable times. Property access for non-members brokers. This section is pretty much all the same. Listing firm may be contacted by licensed brokers who are not members of MLS and do not have access to the key box on the property. Seller authorizes or does not authorize if not filled in, firm to provide access to the property to licensed brokers who are not members of MLS. If authorized, listing firm shall or shall not, if not filled in, be required to attend any such showing. If authorized, listing firm shall or shall not, if not filled in, require brokers who are not members of MLS to execute an access agreement prior to any showing. The access agreements are in our forms. So in the event you are in that situation, you will have to send that over, have those non-Northwest MLS members sign those agreements before they show the property. So that's the only thing that you really have to worry about. Number 9. Alberto, you want to read 9?
Yeah, seller authorizes listing firm and MLS to publish and distribute the listing data to the other members of the MLS and their affiliates and third parties for public display and other purposes. Subject to any restrictions imposed by seller, this authorization shall survive termination of this agreement. Firm is authorized to report the sale of the property, including price and all terms, to MLS and to its members, financial institutions, appraisers, and others related to the sale. Firm may refer this listing to any other cooperating multiple listing service at firm's discretion or a licensed broker who is not a member of the multiple listing service. Firm shall cooperate with all other members of MLS, members of the multiple listing service to which the listing is referred, and any licensed members who are not members of a multiple listing service. MLS is a intended third party beneficiary of this agreement and will provide the listing data to its members and their affiliates and third parties without verification and without assuming any responsibility with respect to this agreement.
All right, Vanessa, you want to hit 10, please? Andrew, you want to hit 10?
I'm driving, I can't do that.
Uh-oh, all right. Yeah, please don't. Don't want any accidents.
I just passed the state patrol.
Nice. Hopefully you were not doing 75. Let's see. Laura, can you unmute and read 10? Try third time's the charm, maybe. Maybe not.
I can read
Kristen,
it, Eric.
you
This is
got it?
Kaylee.
Oh,
Yep.
thanks, Kate.
No worries. Neither firm, MLS, nor any members of MLS or of any multiple listing service to which the listing is referred shall be responsible for, and seller shall indemnify and hold them harmless from any loss, theft, or damage of any nature or kind whatsoever to the property, any personal property therein, or any personal injury resulting from the condition of the property, including entry by the key to the key box and or at open houses, except for damage or injury caused by their gross negligence or willful misconduct. Seller is advised to notify seller's insurance company that the property is listed for sale and ascertain that the seller has adequate insurance coverage. If the property is to be vacant during all or part of the listing term, seller is advised to request that a vacancy clause be added to the seller's insurance policy. Seller acknowledges that intercepting or recording conversations of persons in the property without first obtaining their consent violates RCW 9.73.030, and seller shall indemnify and hold firm and other members of the MLS harmless from any related claims.
How many of you guys are telling your sellers to make sure if their property is going to be vacant, that they request a vacancy clause to be added to seller's insurance policy? How many guys do that?
I
You've
just
only
found
had
this out right
You just found this out right now. This isn't different. This has always been that way.
What do they count as vacant, like vacant for 2 weeks or 3 months? I mean, there's a time frame there.
Vacant is vacant. No one's living in it. Probably a good idea. They should if it's listed for sale and people are coming into the house and it's vacant, they probably should update their insurance.
But what I'm saying is, like, I have a listing where they're back and forth, they're still living in the house, but they go to someplace else, another property in Las Vegas, so.
All right, 11. Chris, you want to do 11?
Sure, I thought you were right, we're saying 11,
Nah.
but, no, sorry. Do you wanna do 11?
11
11
wants it.
Seller warranty, seller warrants that the seller has the right to sell the property on the terms herein. If seller provides firm with any photographs, drawings, or sketches of the property, seller warrants that the seller has the necessary rights to photography, drawing, or sketches to allow firm to use them as contemplated by this agreement. Seller shall
Indemnify.
indemnify and hold firm and other members of the MLS harmless in the event the foregoing warranties are incorrect. Seller shall represent to the best of the seller's knowledge that the property information on the listing input sheets attached to and incorporated to this agreement by this reference is correct.
Yeah, so right there, they're saying that, yep, seller agrees that all those input sheets are, because a lot of times we just get those all filled in and we sell them or send them over and authenticate the initial and, I mean,
But the timing of this, if we're
I know.
selling, if we're signing the 1A 3 months before we're listing it, I don't have my listing input sheets done. I might not have even been in the house yet.
Maybe. Oh, definitely now. Yeah, when we're gonna have 90 days.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny that they say that. It's referenced right there.
Is that new or was that in the old one?
No, that was in the old one.
I never attached minutes.
All right, short sale, not distressed home conveyance. For the purpose of time, we're actually gonna skip this one. This is not really, that hasn't changed at all. That's all exactly the same. Seller disclosure statement, unless seller is exempt under the RCW 6406, seller shall provide to firm as soon as reasonably practical. Here's that phrase again. Seller disclosure statement, Form 17, residential, Form 17C, unimproved residential, or Form 17 commercial. Seller shall indemnify, defend, and hold firm harmless from and against any and all claims that the information seller provides on Form 17, 17C, 17 commercial is inaccurate. Is that right? Seller shall identify, defend, and hold firm harmless from, any claims about inaccurates. Okay, there it is. Okay, closing. Seller shall furnish and pay for a buyer's policy of title insurance showing marketable title to the property. Seller shall pay real estate excise tax and 1/2 of any escrow fees or such portion of escrow fees and any other fees or charges provided by law in the case of a FHA, USDA, or VA finance sale. Rent, taxes, interest, reserves, assumed encumbrances, homeowner fees, and insurance are to be prorated between seller and the buyer as of the date of closing. Sellers shall prepare and execute a certification MLS Form 22E or equivalent under the Foreign Investment in Real Estate Property Tax Act. FIRPTA and firm may provide a copy of the FIRPTA certification to escrow and the buyer. If seller is a foreign person or entity and the sale is not otherwise exempt from FIRPTA, seller acknowledges that a percentage of the amount realized from the sale will be withheld for payment to the Internal Revenue Service, and seller shall pay any fees, including any fees incurred by the buyer related to such withholding and payment. there's the section in case you do have a FERPTA deal. We've had a lot of them this year. There have been a ton of them. I have not seen this many in the history of my career, and this year, I don't know what it is, but definitely there's been a lot of these coming up. And know that escrows are requiring buyers to get the tax forms filled out and seen by a CPA. A CPA that is basically certified for FERPTA, like they're requiring it. Who pays for that? We just read it.
The seller.
That's a cost to the seller. We've had some buyers actually go pay it on their own and stuff because it hasn't been explained. But that is a cost that the seller is supposed to pay for it, and they agree to it in the listing. So that hasn't changed. This is all the same. But be prepared for that. All right, damages in the event of buyer's breach. In the event seller retains earnest money is liquidated damages on buyer's breach. Any cost advanced or committed by firm on seller's behalf shall be paid therefrom, and the balance shall be retained by seller or divided equally between seller and firm, retained by seller if not checked. If you guys do staging, you do Matterhort, you do all the photos, you pay for all those stuff, and you have a buyer, that walks, seller retains earnest money. If this is marked and you do mark it as divided equally, you should get half those funds to help cover your costs, your upfront costs. So.
Wait, the way I read it
Mhm.
is, let's say that the earnest money that they, after the breach, they got, let's say, $5,000.
Mhm.
Doesn't it say any costs by the firm shall be paid therefrom, and then the balance, so it comes off the top, any expenses that you've had. So if I paid $2,000 for staging, then that $5,000 goes down to $3,000.
Right.
And then that $3,000 will either be retained by seller or divided equally. That's different than what you said it right.
Okay, seller's not checked. Yeah, so it's divided. Yeah, so in the event.
I see what you're saying.
Any cost
It comes off
advance.
the top no matter what.
Yeah, but how many times,
Well,
how many times is that happening?
not very often.
But that's the thing that, you can enforce that. Yeah, it does. It does come off the top. In the event you don't mark it, it's automatically remaining amount is supposed to go to the seller. But most people aren't enforcing it. I think the best option though, to make clarity in the event you are doing expensive staging and doing all these additional, high costs. I think it's really a good idea to use a Form 18, and you'll put on the 18, for clarification purposes. In the event seller terminates, or cancels the agreement prior to the listing term, seller agrees to reimburse listing broker X dollar amount for all cost of staging and, whatever advertising or any other thing you want to do. I would actually put it in there so it's clear. And in the event earnest money is retained from a sale fail, that those funds will immediately go to listing broker. You can do that. And I think that's definitely a lot clearer than just relying on this. Okay, attorney's fees in the event either party employs an attorney to enforce any terms of this agreement and is successful, the other party agrees to pay reasonable attorney's fees. In the event of trial, the successful party shall be entitled to an award of attorney's fees and expenses. The amount of the attorney's fees and expenses shall be fixed by the court. The venue of any suit shall be in the county unless the property is located. And then here is our other. So yeah, I guess you could even write it in the other, and write without using the 18. You can actually go ahead and put that. You guys notice something different on this?
We're signing it.
What do you see that's
Listing
different?
firm is on there. Oh, wait, no.
Listing firm license number.
Nope, that's always been on there. Seller phone number, seller email address.
Oh, yeah, those are good.
Like the
And
sales
listing
purchase
broker
agreement.
phone and email. Those aren't on that.
Yeah, isn't that weird? That's a little different.
Are they required?
Mhm.
Who wants those?
Who would need those maybe? Cause now, remember in,
Escrow.
yeah, but also in, your input sheets, that seller's phone number, is that a required field any longer? It's not, huh? Yeah, so this is it's a
If I'm in
update.
transaction desk and I put the seller's phone number in here, is that automatically gonna put it on my listing info sheet?
No. Mm-mm. Nope, because it's not a required field. All right, and then that is it. We are done with 1A. Hopefully, gave you some more insight to our ever-changing world of real estate here in the Pacific Northwest. And we have one last chat. Let's see. Just a thanks. You're welcome, Carrie. All right, you guys. Thank you, thank you. Appreciate you. Please be sure to come to the sales meeting next week. And we'll have more discussions about these topics. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I put it there.